Welcome, fellow Lions fans. This is Jimmy Liao. We are finally and mercifully eliminated from the playoffs. So let's review what happened in the Titans game as well as what to look for this week in practice for the Lions. Frank Herring, Jamie Collins, and Tracy Walker all got dinged up in the Titans game, but they were all back in the game, so no issues there. Halapoulivaati Vaitai started the game, but left at the 2-minute mark of the second quarter, actually halfway through a drive. He played the first two plays of the drive. I did not notice anything on video, no obvious injuries. Maybe he was on a strict snap count, or maybe he slightly aggravated his left foot, which has been bothering him all year. Hard to say there. Matthew Stafford came into the game with a rib cartilage issue, either a contusion or a sprain. He looked great throwing the ball. No issues with him moving around, his motion, his throwing motion, deep throws, everything looked fine. In the fourth quarter, he did take a couple hits. He grimaced a little bit. This was right before the fake punt. But afterwards, he looked fine on the sideline. He was standing up with good posture, no discomfort. You even saw him smiling on the sideline later in the game. So I don't expect any major aggravation of his rib cartilage. I expect him to play next week. During practice this week, I would expect NPs and LPs, though. I would not expect him to have any full practice this week or even the rest of the year. Kenny Golladay had no practice all last week, which means he's almost certainly out for the Bucs. Lions players usually try to get a 2-week ramp up, so way too late for that. And the Bucs game is on Saturday as well. Now, there's only one game left after that versus the Vikings. So he may be done for the year. Even if he's healthy for the Vikings game, would it even make sense for him personally to play in that game? Well, the pros are he could show he's healthy going into the offseason by playing well in that game, playing healthy, playing fast. However, the con is he risks aggravation of the hip injury. These hip injuries, hamstring injuries, big muscle injuries can get re-aggravated pretty easily. We saw that this year with Desmond Trufant with multiple aggravations of his hamstring. The other risk is a new, more serious injury like ACL, Achilles, or something even worse than that. And from Galladay's standpoint, I could see him just not wanting to risk any major injury going into the offseason when he's trying to sign a big deal. There are other ways he can prove health in the offseason with workouts, physicals, things like that. Frank Ragnow had a vocal cord contusion, maybe something even a little bit more serious than that last week. Don't know exactly for sure his diagnosis. The initial report was a throat fracture, which may have been an overstatement of the severity of his actual injury. I thought there was a good chance he would play this week against the Titans. However, he did not. Now, the neck is not an area that can really be protected for football players. You can't put extra padding around that area. I don't know if they're allowed to extend the face mask down an extra couple inches to protect it. I don't remember ever seeing that before. So there may have just been a small risk of aggravation of the vocal cord issue. And with no way to protect it, might have been a better safe than sorry type reason to just keep him out. I think there is a pretty good chance he'll be back for the Bucs, but that's just speculation, as I have no idea what the actual injury is. Dashawn Hand was placed on IR this past week, which was unfortunate as well. So that's the injury report for the Titans game as well as looking forward. Now let's talk about the offensive scheme for the game that I saw in the Titans game. I thought it looked good. I think it's looked good since Patricia got fired. The offense continues to be very pass-centric. There's much less trying to just jam the run up the middle. They're using play action whenever possible, including many second and third and short situations where in the past they would have just tried to run the ball and just eke out a first down. They're taking a lot more shots downfield. They're letting Stafford cook, which is really the way we should have been playing the entire year. using the pass to set up the run. So the offense has looked really good. I think this does increase the chances that Darrell Bevell would be retained as offensive coordinator going into next year. Unfortunately, the defense is still terrible. Does not look any better after Matt Patricia's firing. So Corey Undlin has not been able to have any impact. The pass rush is minimal, almost non-existent still. And even when we're dropping 7 into coverage, which is most of the time, the coverage is poor. In man coverage, guys are one-on-one getting beat. In zone coverage, guys are wide open 20 yards down the field with nobody within 5 to 10 yards of them. My big question is, where are the safeties in our defense? Duron Harmon, as we know, played a horrendous game. He looks very slow out there. He actually looked pretty good earlier in the year. He had a couple interceptions, but he is looking very slow. He looks like Glover Quinn in his last year slow. I love Glover Quinn, but that last year he had lost multiple steps in his speed. And that's what Duron Harmon is looking like right now. Tracy Walker, who had some impact earlier in the year, breaking up passes. There was a blitz on Aaron Rodgers, I remember, where he put good pressure on. But he's been non-existent, just invisible the past 8 to 10 games as well. So if our safeties are not going to be covering anybody down the field, not going to be making any plays on passes down the field on either zone or man defense, we might as well blitz them. Might as well try to see if they can get some pressure on the quarterback. Now, there's a question after the game. People are asking, do we need a complete defensive overhaul because the defense just looks so horrible? Do we need to replace all the players? Now, I'm not willing to say that at all until a competent defensive coach is in place. I think Matt Patricia's schemes and strategies were so poor that it's really hard to judge the players. And remember, you can't have star players everywhere. Most teams just have solid players everywhere. Maybe you get 2 or 3 star players on defense, and that's about it. You need a good scheme. In addition, scheme can turn players into stars. Now, I still remember back with the 49ers, the year before Jim Harbaugh took over, the Niners were considered one of the worst teams in the league with no talent and just a complete rebuild. Jim Harbaugh came in one offseason, somehow turned the Niners overnight into a great defensive unit with multiple Pro Bowlers. How did that happen? It was really stunning and really what made Jim Harbaugh a star in the NFL. Unfortunately, he has not been able to do that with the Wolverines, but it does show that scheme and coaching can make a huge difference and can make guys play much better overnight. Now, there are a bunch of guys on defense who I think have the potential to be really good. These are all guys who are signed for next year. Tracy Walker, who's played really well in the past for us, has been invisible this year, but has done a lot of good things last year and the year before. Amani Oruwariye, who's played really well this year at cornerback. Jamie Collins has played well this year. Penasini, our rookie 6th rounder, has been very good. Danny Shelton has played pretty well for us this year. Trey Flowers has not done a whole lot in his first couple of years, but he's still a solid player. Hopefully he can recover from his injury. Julian Okwara, 3rd-round pick, has potential. Austin Bryant has flashed the past 2-3 games, although he's had a major history of injury issues. Dashawn Hand looked good a couple of games ago, but then unfortunately he's back on IR again, so he could be a chronic injury issue. But those are all guys who could create the foundation for our team going forward. And then we have guys like Romeo Okwara, who's not re-signed for next year, who's made quite a few splash plays for us this year. I don't think it's worth re-signing him to an elite level contract like a Trey Flowers contract at all, because I think more than likely this is somewhat of a fluky year for him, as he hasn't really shown this kind of ability in the past. But we got guys on defense that can be molded into at least a solid defense going forward. Now, the next topic is Brayden Coombs, who got fired after the 4th down failed punt issue. Now, I totally agree with the idea that you can't have insubordination on the team. You can't have coaches just doing their own thing, going rogue, basically. But apparently there were some issues going into this. There's probably a lot more behind the scenes that we're never going to find out about. I do think going forward on 4th down was absolutely the right call, though, because there's no point in kicking the ball and letting our defense back on the field. Our defense gives up 70, 80-yard drives like nothing. So field position doesn't really help our defense at all. But I do get that Matthew Stafford just got hit a couple times. So there was some question about the quarterback situation at that exact point. Would Stafford be ready for a 4th down? Would Chase Daniel have to come in cold to throw a 4th down pass? So I understand kicking it if the quarterback situation was very unsettled. All right, at least some positive news. We got 3 Pro Bowlers. TJ Hockenson, who's played very well for us this year, has made a lot of great catches the past few games. Ragnow, who's been really good for us this year, made a lot of great blocks, has been rock solid. I expect him to recover fully from his throat vocal cord issue, so he's a solid piece of the team going forward. Jack Fox, who's been very good punting for us. He was really good in the first half of the year. I feel like he slipped a little bit in the second half of the year, but he's been solid too. And it's just interesting that Bob Quinn has drafted a couple Pro Bowlers in the first round the past 2-3 years. So good on him for that. Again, I don't feel like Quinn's drafting and personnel decisions are necessarily the problem with this team. It's hard to judge these players when the coaching, the head coaching, the defensive schemes, the offensive schemes have been so bad the past 2-3 years. All right, feel free to leave YouTube comments or find me on Twitter at JimmyLealMD. Thanks.